Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. So there's a very interesting new film out called American Animals, which is from director Bart Layton, who back in 2012 made a very interesting and somewhat slippery movie called The Imposter, which was a docudrama that played around with notions of the truth, whereby this family in America lost their son, who was seemingly then came back to them only to be revealed as a French imposter, hence the title, who somehow managed to inveigle his way into this family. Fascinating film, dealt with the idea of what is now probably commonly known as alternative facts, the idea that what is the truth, what is fiction, and so on. And this very much underlines American Animals, which also shares certain stylistic sensibilities with The Imposter as well. On the one hand, it is I interviewed Bart Layton about this film. It was a very interesting interview, and he described the movie as an experiment. It's not strictly a drama. It's not strictly a documentary. It's not entirely a docudrama either. He's like, how do I make a film that is quite experimental and unclassifiable and actually plays around with notions of what the truth is? And I think this film actually does that very well. So it's based on the 2004 American Transylvania University heist, in which four disaffected students basically robbed a book of priceless Audubon wildlife paintings from their very high security university library. And it explores, by embracing the conventions of the traditional heist movie, it explores how the team first got together, how they planned the heist and how they executed it, and what the ultimate fallout of it was. Among the cast, you've got Evan Peters from American Horror Story. You've also got Barry Keoghan, who's a terrific rising star. He was in Dunkirk. He was also in the Yorgos Lanthimos film, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, in which he was really quite terrifying and creepy in that. So you've got some really talented young actors working under a very interesting director, and this is only his second feature film. It's very impressive. Now, the interesting thing about this movie is the way that it mixes the cinematic depiction of what happened with the talking heads of the four people who are actually involved. And what the movie does very cleverly is it deliberately undercuts itself, because what you'll get very often within the cinematic depiction of what happened, which is very stylishly done, very sort of bold, sweeping camera movements. There's a fantastic use of Elvis Presley at one point during a sequence that might be real or might be imagined. Fantastically stylish. The film begins with an upside down shot of this kind of disintegrating local town, which appears to feed the disillusion of these four central characters. Really stylishly, very confidently directed movie. But what makes it interesting is not just the visual style, but the way that the eyewitness testimonies of the four guys involved in it actually undermine each other, because none of these guys can actually determine whose version of events is actually the truth. There's one point where two of them go and meet somebody who will then lead them on to a fence character, and the two of the guys then interrupt the narrative and go, well, no, I thought the guy was wearing a purple scarf. No, the guy was wearing a suit and he was an older guy. And what the movie does is you realise that it's basically playing around with the notion of what truth and fiction is, and the movie then takes on a residual, quite complicated character of its own, just like with The Imposter, where what you get is not just the narrative of what happened, because the basic gist of it is that this heist did actually happen, that the bare bones of it is true, but the way in which it played out is constantly up for debate in the movie, deliberately so. The movie deliberately obfuscates about that, and what then happens is this kind of meta-narrative comes out underneath the story about what do you actually believe in, and the movie is very successfully does that. And I think Bart Layton explains to me that what you basically do with any kind of movie is you have to make a contract with the audience. He's like, with a documentary, you make a contract with the audience that what you're telling is factually true, although of course in documentaries there is, as he very rightly pointed out, there is an editorialization of the facts which is also manipulative, and this movie is similarly manipulative in a good way, in that it starts out and then very quickly starts to challenge you as to whose version of the truth you want to believe. And what that consequently does is, rather than undermining the drama, it actually makes it a lot spikier and a lot more complicated, and it means that it lingers in the mind a lot more. And it's a really, really impressive film. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was beautifully directed, really well acted. I know Bart Layton's name has been linked in some circles to the new Bond film now, which would be very, very interesting if we had a Bond film that plays around with the ideas of perception, maybe maybe a Bond movie in which we might be getting some kind of testimonial from him about how a certain job went down, and then maybe mixed in with where we actually see the mission playing out. I don't know. That's all speculative. For the time being, this film is a very, very impressive sophomore effort. And I really would recommend that you go and see it. It's called American Animals, and drop me a comment here at Kubrick Corner with your thoughts, and I'll see you soon. Ta-ra.